It was a crisp November afternoon in New York City. The air carried the faint smell of roasted chestnuts as Donald Trump, dressed in a sharp navy blue coat and his signature red tie, walked down Fifth Avenue. The bustling crowds moved around him, unaware that he was there, taking in the city's energy. Near Bryant Park, something caught his attention. A woman sat huddled against a building, her thin jacket barely shielding her from the cold. Her trembling hands held a worn cardboard sign. "Veteran in need, please help." Trump slowed his steps, his sharp gaze fixed on her. He rarely stopped during his walks, but this moment was different. The woman's weary eyes, filled with exhaustion and quiet dignity, made him pause. He approached cautiously, kneeling to her level. Passers-by shot curious glances but kept moving, as if this scene didn't belong to their world. "Ma'am," he began, his voice low and calm. "What's your name?" The woman looked up slowly, her face lined with hardship. "It's Maria," she said softly. "Maria Harrison." Trump nodded. "Maria," he repeated. "You serve this country?" "Yes, sir," she answered. 12 years in the Navy. But things didn't turn out the way I thought they would." Maria hesitated but continued. She explained how an injury overseas ended her military career. Adjusting to civilian life was tough. Medical bills piled up, jobs were scarce, and soon she found herself here, on the streets of the very country she had served. Trump listened, his expression growing somber with every word. "What does it say about us," he thought aloud, "when a veteran, someone who served this country, is left begging on the streets?" Maria's eyes dropped. Silence said everything. Trump straightened up, resolute. "Stay here, Maria. We're going to fix this," he said. Pulling out his phone, he walked a few feet away. "Margaret," he said quickly, "find a nearby hotel and a doctor for a checkup. It's urgent." Returning to Maria, he knelt again. "Help is on the way," he said, "but first, let's get you something warm to eat." He flagged down a food vendor, buying her a hot coffee and a sandwich. Maria accepted the food hesitantly, her hands still shaking. Trump sat beside her on the cold sidewalk, asking about her deployments and life before the Navy. Maria spoke of friends lost in combat and endless nights trying to adapt to civilian life. "It's hard to bounce back," she said quietly. "Sometimes it feels like the system gave up on me." Minutes later, a sleek black SUV pulled up. Trump stood and extended his hand. "Maria," he said, "we're taking you somewhere safe." Maria hesitated. "Why are you doing this, Mr. Trump? You don't even know me." Trump looked her in the eye. "Because someone should have done it a long time ago." Together, they stepped into the SUV, leaving the cold street behind as it drove toward a new beginning. As the SUV moved through the busy streets of New York City, Maria sat silently, her hands gripping the cup of coffee Trump had given her. She glanced out the window at the city that seemed to move on without noticing her struggles. Trump sat beside her, his phone in hand, giving precise instructions to someone on the other end. His tone was calm but firm, used to making decisions. Maria broke the silence. "Mr. Trump, I don't know what to say. I didn't expect anyone to stop, let alone you." Trump turned to her, his expression softening. "You don't need to say anything, Maria. You've done your part for this country. Now it's time someone does theirs." The SUV slowed in front of a luxury hotel. The driver stepped out, opening the door for Maria. She hesitated, looking at Trump. "Are you sure about this? I don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden," Trump said firmly. "You're a veteran. You deserve this." Inside the hotel, the staff, prepped by Trump's assistant Margaret, greeted them warmly. A manager escorted Maria to a room on one of the upper floors. As she stepped into the suite, her breath caught. The room was spacious and warm, with a large bed, a private bathroom, and a view of the city skyline. Maria turned to Trump. "This is too much. I don't even know how to thank you." "You don't need to thank me," Trump replied. "What matters now is getting you back on your feet." Moments later, a doctor arrived, carrying a medical bag. Trump motioned for Maria to sit. The doctor introduced himself, then began a quick checkup. Maria was quiet but cooperative, her exhaustion clear. The doctor prescribed basic medications and recommended rest, good food, and follow-up care. As the doctor packed up, Trump's phone buzzed. It was Margaret, letting him know that Veterans Reconnect, a nonprofit for veterans, had been contacted and would send someone over. Trump relayed the update to Maria, who seemed overwhelmed by how quickly things were moving. "Maria," he said, sitting across from her at the small dining table, "I've spoken to people who specialize in situations like yours. They'll help you find housing, job training, and anything else you need." Maria looked at him, tears welling in her eyes. I felt invisible for so long. I thought no one cared anymore. You're not invisible, Trump said, his voice steady. You matter, and you're not alone in this. A knock at the door interrupted them. Margaret entered, followed by a woman with a warm smile and a clipboard. Maria, my name is Lisa, she said, extending her hand. I'm with Veterans Reconnect. We're here to help you get back on track. Lisa sat with Maria, discussing her needs and laying out a plan. They talked about temporary housing, mental health support, and job placement opportunities. Lisa reassured Maria that she wouldn't have to navigate this journey alone. We'll be with you every step of the way, Lisa said. As the conversation continued, Trump stood quietly in the background. He didn't need recognition or gratitude. What mattered was that Maria's life was beginning to change. As Maria sat with Lisa, going through the details of her plan, the reality of the situation began to sink in. She was no longer invisible. She had a team of people ready to help her rebuild her life. For the first time in years, she felt hope stirring within her. Lisa explained how Veterans Reconnect would help her secure temporary housing and begin the process of applying for long-term support. They also discussed job training programs tailored to her skills and interests. Maria listened carefully, nodding at each point, but her hands fidgeted slightly. The idea of starting over was overwhelming, but Lisa's calm, encouraging tone made it seem possible. Trump, standing near the window, watched the two women talk. He had done what he could, and now it was up to Maria to take the next steps. He admired her strength, despite everything she had been through. There was something inspiring about her resilience. Maria, Lisa said, glancing at her clipboard, I'll arrange for you to tour a few housing options tomorrow. They're close to the support center, so you'll have access to everything you need. Does that sound okay? Maria hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Yes, that sounds really good. Thank you. Lisa smiled. We'll take this one step at a time. You're not alone in this. After Lisa left, Maria turned to Trump, who was still standing quietly. Mr. Trump, she said, her voice steady, I don't know how to repay you for all of this. You've done more for me in a day than anyone has in years. Trump shook his head, a slight smile on his face. Maria, you don't owe me anything. You've already done your part by serving this country. This is the least we can do for you. Maria looked down at her hands, the weight of his words sinking in. She had spent so long feeling forgotten that hearing someone acknowledge her service felt like a lifeline. Trump checked his watch, realizing he had stayed longer than planned. Maria, he said, I have to head out, but Margaret will stay in touch. If you need anything at all, you let her know. Maria stood, her posture a little straighter now. I'll never forget this, Mr. Trump. I'll make the most of this chance, and someday I'll pay it forward. Trump nodded, extending his hand. That's all I ask, Maria. Take this opportunity and make it yours. As Trump left the room, Maria watched him go, her mind racing with possibilities she hadn't allowed herself to consider in years. She had a long road ahead, but for the first time, she wasn't walking it alone. Lisa's plan was clear, and the support system around her was strong. The future didn't seem so impossible anymore. That night, Maria sat by the window of her suite, staring out at the city lights. For years, those lights had seemed distant, like they belonged to someone else's life. But now they felt a little closer, as if they were welcoming her back into the world. Is it society's responsibility or the government's to ensure no veteran ends up homeless? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.